Now we've got to talk at Tesla, and boy, oh boy, we've got a lot to talk about, from new firings at Tesla, what the heck is going on with the Supercharger Network, and what does it have to do with the White House and billions of dollars? What's going on with Mr. Old School Charlie Munger lashing out at Tesla, and what's going on with the European Union? We've got a lot to cover. Let's see how quickly we can get through it. First, 2 days ago, we heard roses are red, violets are blue. We have a flash sale for you. That's 69% off on the programs on Building Your Wealth, expiring Friday at 11:59 p.m. We extended that flash sales. Take advantage of that and get lifetime access. And yes, that is actually what I said 2 days ago. But then I also followed that up with saying that 2 days ago, individuals at Tesla Buffalo, New York, ended up circulating at the autopilot labeling team, which is kind of where you have minimum wage starting at $19, and you kind of sit and push a button like, yep, looks right, yep, no, looks wrong, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, blah, 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 and you do that all day long. They were pissed about apparently not getting snow days that they wanted, and being monitored for how long they were spending in the bathroom, which I don't know what's more weird, the suggestion that the employee is concerned about people monitoring how long they're spending in the bathroom, or the company monitoring potentially how long people are spending in the bathroom. I'm not sure. It all sounds a little weird. But they circulated a letter saying, roses are red, violets are blue, unions start with you. And somebody at Starbucks thought it would be a good idea, apparently, like somebody who helped start unions for Starbucks, decided to be a good idea to connect with people over at Tesla and try to start a union at Tesla. And so they got about 25 people to put a letter together and email Elon Musk and say, yo, we're unionizing. And pretty much every one of you called it in not only the comments on the live chat or in the what's it called, in the comments on the actual YouTube video. And what did you end up getting? Well, what you ended up getting was, as you all called it, you're fired. Tesla fired all 25 of the individuals who started suggesting that they wanted to unionize. Goodbye, unions. Now, Tesla has been slammed for this in the past. My expectation is even if Tesla were to get sued for firing people for threatening to unionize, although they'll probably use a different rationale, it would be years before that sort of litigation actually ends up playing out. So we'll probably come back to the roses are red, violets are blue argument in 2025. And by then, honestly, I think Tesla's going to be in a lot larger of a place than, where we are today. Now, another thing, obviously, that we've got to talk about is what's going on with the Tesla Supercharging Network. Now, this is actually interesting. The Wall Street Journal did a phenomenal piece on this. I think they put it together the most clearly. And then we'll get into Buffett and some of what's going on in Europe because there's a lot to talk about. But we'll look at this. So Tesla's expanding their non-Tesla supercharger pilot. And basically what they're doing is, look, they have 40,000 superchargers worldwide. And the White House gives like massive mega subsidies if you end up opening your supercharger network to other electric vehicles. And this makes sense because the White House wants more electric vehicles in America. But the big thing that everyone's worried about in America is premature electrification, of course. Remember the Ram ad for a vehicle that doesn't even exist yet. Anyway, people have range anxiety when it comes to buying electric vehicles. There aren't enough superchargers, and a lot of superchargers are just not super. They suck. They're very slow from other companies. Tesla, by far, has one of the most robust supercharger networks, one of the most reliable networks. And Tesla now plans to open at least 3,500 new superchargers and existing 250 kW chargers to drivers of all EVs by the end of the year. The White House is bragging about how wonderful this is for everybody. It actually is a good thing. Now, Tesla is expected to receive potentially billions of dollars, billions of federal subsidies to continue to build their supercharger network because they're doing this. Now think about that. That's incredible. So Elon Musk actually visited with the Biden administration about a month ago, and I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up talking about the Supercharger Network and how they were going to announce it. Apparently, in addition to him actually visiting with the Biden administration, Elon Musk participated in a call with their infrastructure coordinator, and they discussed about, basically, their discussions revolved around improving highway charging. And this right here is what I love about Elon Musk, is he's a very reasonable person. They say here, quote, he was very open, very constructive, and at the time he said his intent was to work with us to make the network interoperable. A lot of people say, hey, like, is Tesla ceding a competitive advantage for doing this? And I think the way to look at this is, yes, to some degree, the Tesla supercharging network motivates people to buy a Tesla, right? That obviously is a draw. However, if you now let other people use the electric vehicle network, what you really potentially do is you increase congestion for people who have Teslas. You kind of take away that whole like Tesla club feeling, exclusivity when you drive through a mall and there's just like a row of backed-in Teslas and it looks really badass. I mean, it's like the best ad ever. And if you start seeing like Kias and Nissans or whatever plugging into the Tesla superchargers, it's kind of like, okay, it's not unique to Tesla anymore. Not that there's anything wrong with Kias or Nissans, okay? I'm just saying, not unique anymore. But, well, so let me first say, yes, there is some form of potential negative in sort of that competitive advantage that Tesla might have. But I think the reality is people buying Teslas are probably not buying Tesla solely because of the supercharger network. They're either buying a Tesla because they want the full self-driving, the technology, how fantastic the freaking car is in terms of acceleration, and just how sleek it is, right? You're buying it for all of these other reasons. And the supercharger network, I personally believe, is just icing on the cake. And the reality is people who are not going to buy a Tesla probably just aren't going to buy a Tesla anyway. In fact, somebody very close to me, and I was really surprised by this, but somebody very close to me, they actually, I asked them, I go, hey, have you, they refused to buy a Tesla, by the way, and I asked them, I go, hey, did you see my latest Twitter post? And he's like, no, I uninstalled Twitter after Elon bought it. And I kind of like paused for a moment, and then I just said the quiet part out loud, and I'm like, I literally never thought I would meet someone in person who actually uninstalled the app because Elon bought it. And he's like, yeah, I'm one of them. And I'm like, I'm not even gonna start. It's like, we could still have beer, but I'm not even gonna start because that's insane and ludicrous and silly, but whatever. Everybody is entitled to their opinion. My opinion is very obvious. But anyway, those people, whomever they may be, I don't dislike them. I don't disrespect them for that. I think it's crazy, but that's okay. I also think in many regards I'm crazy. But then again, I think you have to be crazy to wake up at 3 every day and work until, work basically 2 jobs. But anyway, that's not to say that, working 2 jobs, big deal. A lot of people work 2 jobs, okay? Anyway, point of this is to say that people who are not buying a Tesla are probably not buying a Tesla for other reasons outside of like the supercharging network potentially being available to them, right? So the way to look at it is the minus of people not buying a Tesla because of opening up the supercharger network, I personally think anecdotally is nominal. In addition to that, the plus is that Tesla's probably going to get billions of dollars of money to expand the supercharging network, which actually attracts people to Tesla in the first place, right? Because you actually get cheaper charging rates in the Teslas, but it also potentially gives Tesla money to invest in their manufacturing ability, so you're getting more manufacturing subsidies to actually produce the Tesla charging vehicles, or not the charging vehicles, the charging stations. That's because if you actually look, let me see, where is it? If I look at housing in the Wall Street Journal article, they basically talk about how the Inflation Reduction Act requires a certain percentage, here it is, that of the steel enclosures or housings needing to be manufactured in the United States starting immediately. And I think Elon Musk is going to look at that and he's going to be very smart. He's going to go, well, I mean, if you want us to manufacture more of these housings in the United States, we're going to need some big old tax credits to help us expand Giga Texas or whatever, right? And by 2024, at least 55% of the cost of all components needs to be manufactured in the US. Okay, hey, give us some bills so we can maybe mine more or whatever we want to do in the United States. So I actually personally think this is absolutely fantastic. I think this is great. The loss you have is nominal. The subsidies you're getting are absolutely huge. Now we got to talk Charlie Munger in just a moment, but I just want to, on the topic of subsidies, talk about, here's a Barclays piece. And I mean, I'm seeing stuff like this daily about talking about how Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act is a serious competitive threat to the European Union because of how many subsidies are going into battery storage and electric vehicles. Tax breaks for manufacturing them, like what we just saw for the EV network. And remember, if you actually go through Tesla's document on, what they end up, like how it's going to end up working, that's this particular document here. You basically download the Tesla app and you can plug in other vehicles by just marking which charging stall you're at, and then you pay through the Tesla app. I do want to make it very clear, though, on this note of subsidies and sort of a tangent, there is an additional cost for non-Tesla members. So non-Tesla members do pay a little bit more money. So I wanted to clear that up. But anyway, back to the subsidy stuff. The amount of money that's expected to flow into state support subsidies in the United States alone is expected to be somewhere around $440 billion into energy storage, green, solar, electric vehicles, you name it. And the same is expected to happen in Europe to somewhat of a smaller degree, but also massive. So sectors that are going to benefit from these subsidies: mining, energy, semis, capital goods, autos, chemicals, construction materials, utilities. These investments are going to be huge. And I mean, keep in mind, we expect not only the United States to throw hundreds of billions of dollars in tax credits and subsidies at this at green vehicles and battery storage and that, but also Europe to compete. And after Europe, guess whom else? China. Massive Chinese subsidies, 450 billion euros worth of subsidies in China's 5-year plan to invest in Chinese electric vehicles. So the amount of money that you're going to get thrown into batteries and EVs probably over the next decade from governments is probably going to exceed $1 trillion. I mean, this is like a huge stimmy check to the industry. It's absolutely insane. But you know who's not stimulating? I hate to say it, but it's Mr. Charlie Munger. Mr. Charlie Munger has some choice words for Tesla versus BYD, so let's listen into that. And here we go.
Question from Steven Spencer, who writes in from New York, New York. He's curious why Mr. Munger prefers an investment in BYD to Tesla.
Well, that's easy. Tesla last year reduced its prices in China twice. BYD increased its prices. We're direct competitors. We're so much ahead of BYD. I mean, BYD is so much ahead of Tesla in China. It's like it's almost ridiculous.
It's almost ridiculous that that's actually not true. I mean, if you actually look at the real data, what do you end up having is you have BYD selling half ICE vehicles and hybrids. Well, those are hybrids, are ICE vehicles, right? And the other half are fully battery electric. If we just look at battery electric vehicles sold by BYD were about 900,000 units in 2022, and Tesla sold about 700,000 in China of the battery electric vehicles, right? So you're talking about 900 versus 700, talking about 28%. I don't know if that's so far ahead. The numbers, I think, are a little bit more worth looking at. And keep in mind, BYD sells vehicles for $15,000 to $30,000 on average. The average selling price of a Tesla is knocking on the door of $52,000. So you have a massively different audience you're appealing to. Smaller vehicles versus larger vehicles. Let's also look at the numbers. When you look at the BYD investor relations information, what do you actually have for the numbers for BYD? Well, you're looking at numbers that aren't anywhere near Tesla's numbers in terms of margins. You're looking at maybe a net margin for Q4 sitting around 3.4%. It's better than it's been in the past, but 3.4% on net versus Tesla's 13 to 17% net bottom line numbers. Or if you look at the gross margins, BYD gross margins, maybe $13, $14. Tesla on gross margin 20 to 25. But whatever, Munger, let's keep listening to you for a moment.
And if you look at BYD, which most people have never heard of, if you count all the manufacturing space they have in China to make cars, it would amount to a big percentage of all the land in Manhattan Island. And nobody ever heard of them a few years ago.
All right, let me jump to another question. This one comes from Michael Aseo, who says, this is in regards to some movement at Berkshire, some sales of Berkshire's stakeholdings. Did the sale of some BYD and Taiwan Semi shares have anything to do with the relations between the United States and China, or was it for purely economic reasons?
Well, BYD is selling about 50 times earnings. That is a very high price.
Oh, come on, man. Now he's bagging on his own thing. I mean, come on. I'm starting to lose a little bit of respect, and I don't want to go on for this forever here on Munger. You know what? They've got their opinions. That's okay. But look, this is where Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway sold Taiwan Semiconductors. See it at the pit of that blue line there? To me, that looks a little bit paper handy. Now, don't get me wrong. They bought low, but that looks a little bit paper handy. And now you're telling us how great BYD is with the lower margins, and it's still trading for 50 times earnings. You're basically saying it's trading for roughly the same valuation with worse margins and less expensive vehicles than Tesla. In fact, Bloomberg themselves expects that margins for BYD will suffer more than Tesla's. And this is despite the fact that Tesla has adjusted prices down a little bit versus BYD up a little bit. Again, substantially cheaper vehicle versus much more expensive vehicles than Tesla's. Tesla's just became the third most popular vehicle in Europe. And you know what? Look, I don't know. I'm a Tesla bull, so maybe I'm jaded, but hey, you know what? Sorry, Charlie Munger. I ain't buying it. We got good news here on the anti-union move, I think. You've got a good news here on superchargers. You've got great news on Tesla overall with margins. I'm a big fan.